All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Moon is Flat podcast. My name is Paul, and I'm here with Marshall, the economics wizard, and we're going to be talking about economics a lot today, along with a whole bunch of other fun topics. So to start out with, this is a question you're going to answer at the end. But what are 3 words that you want to be described as? So think about it, and we'll get back to that at the end. The first talking point for the day will be, what is the significance of the Mona Lisa?
Yeah, and I guess I don't know a lot about art, but I did some research when you posed this question to me initially, and it's pretty interesting what I came up with and what I was able to find on it. I think one thing that was interesting is that it develops significance over time. It's not something that immediately was the most popular thing overnight. Not even was it painted in that amount of time. Leonardo took 10 years to paint it, and I think that is something that's significant.
He took 10 years to paint it?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. I had no idea.
He never actually finished it either.
What?
He died before it was completely finished to his standards.
So somebody finished it for him?
No, I mean, if you look at the inner workings of the detail, you can see how some parts are very detailed and other parts are not as detailed.
Really?
And that's just because
So like the last 10 years of his life he was working on it and then he died?
Yeah, he never fully polished it up.
So at that pace, how long would it have taken him? Like another 3? That's crazy long.
It was one of those projects where he might not have ever had an end in mind. He just kept adding and adding to it.
So was it like a hobby or was it like his job?
Yeah, he was licensed out to do it.
Okay.
It was a...
It's not like he was getting paid the kind of money that it would take to
Yeah, I don't know
support.
how you pay for perfection. I don't know how you pay for 10 years of work into a project.
I guess him... Wow, that's crazy. Was he doing it for a specific person?
Mm-hmm. Yep, some rich man, I assume.
Some rich man.
Paid him to paint his wife.
Okay. Well, that makes it pretty interesting, though, when you think about it, because I've heard or read that it has like a 90-something% similarity. I don't know that number for sure, so don't sue. But between the Mona Lisa's face shape and his own self-portraits. That could be just because they have the same painter, and the proportions in his painting could be the same, but could also be he was just messing with us. I don't know. Comment below why you think Leonardo da Vinci made the Mona Lisa look so much like his own self-portraits.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the beauty is that it represented real life so accurately, and that it was a good representation of a person, and whether or not that person is just in his mind or if he heavily used his muse to that end is unknown.
Did he have that lady sitting there for 10 years?
I can't imagine so.
I mean,
it must have been from his memory.
Which is insane. Did he have... He must have had access to mirrors if he was doing self-portraits. So when he was making the structure of faces, maybe he just looked at his own. I don't know.
Perhaps.
Not educated in... When did he live? 15th century? 16th? 13th? 14th? I have no idea. And
yeah, I'm not quite sure myself. I know that...
age, art.
One of the kings of France purchased it after Leonardo's death. And that in and of itself gave it more significance because it had
it was owned by someone
a royal heritage among it then. It was something that was passed down then. I think a source on YouTube I saw indicated that Napoleon had it hung up in his bedroom.
Wow. And so my dad actually went to the Louvre and he has seen the Mona Lisa. And he said it's not that impressive. It's just like a tiny dark painting, basically, that everybody just flocks to see it when there's super impressive works of art, like I think the Venus de Milo is one he mentioned, maybe, and just all the other
I think
greatest works of art of all time are just
its place in history holds a lot of significance as well with it, where initially it didn't mean a whole lot. Then it started to be owned by royalty. It started to develop its significance in France, and then that kind of transferred, and through the Romanticism era in England and much of Europe that developed even more significance, because Romanticism was all about beauty in nature and the way things are and how to express it through poetry and through art, and kind of it was a continuation from the Renaissance, and the fact that like all of like in the rebirth, the Renaissance, there is lots of different types of art and mostly religious, but the fact that the Mona Lisa was something that focused on the beauty within humans, that was something that transferred between generations a lot easier.
And what's kind of crazy about the Mona Lisa is it's not like she's an overly beautiful woman in the way that you think of like a supermodel or something like that. She just looks very kind of normal, but with showing the good side of a normal person. Is kind of my take on it.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw a lot of, through the humanism era, there was a lot of art that focused on the beauty within natural beauty. And it was interesting the bent that Leonardo da Vinci took, where it was more about the modesty of women rather than their beauty. And that in and of itself is a beauty, and that's kind of how some of the significance of the Mona Lisa developed.
Interesting. Well, that's about all I know about the Mona Lisa, so I would love to keep going, but I can't. So, question number 2. Is income inequality a problem? And when you posed that question, I was thinking to myself, income inequality between who? So I'd like to get a little clarification. But what kind of income inequality are we talking about before we decide is it a problem?
Yeah, so the main concern that a lot of people have with income inequality is that it feels like the rich just keep getting richer, and
so it's between the rich and the poor, not men and women.
No, it isn't in reference to that at all.
Okay.
Not from an economic standpoint.
And are we talking about just in America or in the entire world?
It specifically is developing importance in America, and whether or not you see it as a problem, it is something that will trend us towards socialism. And in economics, there are a lot of different viewpoints and ideals. Socialism, while the extreme of socialism is communism, socialist ideas do not necessarily lead you to communism. And I think that that's important to know, that even America is not pure capitalism. There are socialist ideas that are good and beneficial for us to have.
Such as?
I'd argue that progressive taxes are one of those.
Really?
Where we don't need to have a flat tax rate that, it's kind of a way to distribute wealth. I think the government should do better things with the money, but ultimately, at a premise, I think that the progressive taxes they make sense.
I would disagree. And again, I'm not as learned in this as you are. But if someone goes out and makes $5 million, they are bringing more value to the world, I would think, than someone who is working, a minimum wage pizza cleanup job, or, a gas station job, whatever. And it's not like there's any shame in those things, but they're just not progressing humanity along as quickly. They are needed, but it's not changing the world. So why would we try to hinder the people who are actually changing the world?
To do that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that
To do that, you'll need to be online.
This phone knows. It says, to do that, you need to be online. If you want to change the world, get an internet connection, because that's probably how you're watching us anyways. Like and subscribe.
So yeah, I guess I'm not as defined in my understanding of these things, in that, I know about them, and I know some of the arguments, but I haven't exactly, as an economics student, I haven't made up my mind on a lot of these issues.
Sure.
So the questions you pose are very valid, and they throw doubt into why we have things the way they do, why we have things the way they are, rather. But
And I think also because the whole tax system is so complicated, I think if the government learned, I know the government won't learn. You guys, if you're watching FBI agents, just talk to your superiors and say, you guys really don't learn, do you? But if we could learn how to use the taxes in a way that is efficient and not just blow it all on whatever it is that our billions and billions of dollars get blown on, I think a 10%, maybe even 15%, that's pretty high, flat tax rate would be simple and effective, and I think it would be a very welcome change, not only because the rich are no longer taxed at 35 or 40% or whatever it is, because they're just going to keep getting richer. They can dodge taxes pretty easily. If you're not, if you can afford to, then why would you pay the taxes if you can just reinvest it in your business or whatever? You're not actually making income. You're building a business. You make $45,000 a year, or maybe I don't know, 120. But all of the millions of dollars you're making are business expenses. So you have a business expense Lamborghini, which is for advertising or whatever. So the rich people know how to dodge taxes. The poor people don't. They're easy to tax. So I think a 10% flat tax would actually be a lot fairer.
because it would give rich people less of an incentive to dodge the tax, you're saying?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, that is certainly the case, especially at higher tax rates. If you, during more socialist times in America's history, the progressive tax rate for rich people was exceedingly high. I think it was close to 50% of their
crazy.
income, which, in that case, what you get is people dodging it at a much larger rate, or rich people not working, which is a problem in and of itself. I mean, if you're retaining the same amount of taxes with a lower tax rate as with a higher tax rate, then all you're doing is discouraging work from the.
It's literally contributing to people not changing the world for the better, because there's no incentive to get rich if your money's just going to be taken away.
Yeah, and we should incentivize the things that are going to be good for the economy.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into my next point, which is that technological advancement leads to unemployment. If you think about it very simply, if you don't have trucks in your business, everyone will have to walk from place to place. You have to have a lot of employees to do the walking for you. But you get one truck, now you just need one driver of that truck, and you have your entire workforce at the same production speed.
Right, but that's assuming people are only talented enough to walk. And, I mean, people can learn how to drive the truck, and people can learn how to...
Right, but if you don't have a truck...
...package the goods. Right. But I'm saying from the workers' point of view, they see, oh no, my job's being taken away. You can learn how to be a mechanic. If you decide that you can change, you can be successful, because people are looking for motivated people all the time. Employers are. And you'll be able to find a job if you are motivated and willing to change with the times.
I think that the problem with that, though, is that the creation of all these millions of jobs to these large corporations has stripped the worker of skill. It's no longer learn what you can do to benefit the economy. It's just get a job and start working. And that's what a lot of low-skill workers, a lot of immigrants are just compelled to do, because they don't have the skills to be able to do something that is extra beneficial to the economy. And rather than learning that, they can afford to just get a paycheck and then move on. But with the destruction of those jobs, the worker has been stripped of skill, and then now they will be stripped of work. And what do you have when you have
unskilled, unemployed
unemployed workers? That's not much good to society. So what does that come down to then? Where's the problem?
Well, they would need some kind of education and some kind of skill. What had been used for a lot of years was being an apprentice to like like a blacksmith, if we're talking about 15th century, but we're not. So like a plumber's apprentice or an electrician. Those are jobs that will not be replaced by robots for a long time. You can start up a small business doing electric work or something, and you need education for that, but you can get education for that through college, or probably you can get certified by a licensed electrician. I'm not sure how well that works, but I haven't looked into it.
So,
but there's ways.
It is a thing out there today, like vocational schools and things that teach people how to do things that are useful to society. But my question is, why are we teaching a standardized education that shows people what they can do when most people are going to end up just doing low-skill work? The value of a high school degree is basically that you have a better resume than someone without a high school degree. Like, you don't seem to use any of the skills from high school to actually influence and do things at your job. Like, why aren't we teaching in high school how to do things that will benefit society? And then we could have someone like the Fed or an economic bureau decide what are the areas of need, and then we could change the curriculum year to year. I think the idea of a standardized education system leads to equality, but is equality what we're seeking after when we're all going to be in bad shape with a high school degree that is virtually worthless?
What happens is when you leave high school, equality doesn't really matter anymore, because you got to work. And you can get a job minimum wage, or you can get a job as a CEO.
Or you can use the information you learned in high school to springboard to something that you do in college.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't we teach what you can do in college to people so that they can use it right after high school, right after their education that they wouldn't have to pay for, that poorer and lower income people would not be able to afford?
Are the schools able to afford it? I don't know.
Well, the government budget is pretty tight. And I don't know, I feel
Leads us to my next question. Where does all of the money go? I'm kidding.
I feel like education should be a high priority in the budget, though. I feel like it should be higher than it is.
Yeah.
I think we should have the money in place to teach our society what to do next, because that's a clear benefit to society. A more educated workforce is a more productive workforce.
And it's more skilled, too. Yep. All right. Well, that is all the time that we have for that. So we're moving on to, what is the most over-the-top military group in history? I'm excited for this.
So I went with my first answer, and I just did some research on that. So I could be wrong, but I've thought, just to me, based on what I know about history, the Spartan army seemed pretty over the top in their methods, the way that they engaged into combat, into child rearing. I thought it was pretty drastic. Like, the boot camps that America has, people look at those and they say they're pretty intense, but they were doing that for 7-year-olds back in Sparta, and that feels over the top to me.
I don't want to interrupt. I read that Spartans encouraged their young children to steal food. I guess that would just make it tougher or something, but that's insane. When you think of a place like Arabia in Aladdin, where Jasmine's walking around, she's like, "Oh, I'll give an apple to a little kid, and I suppose you want to pay for that," and then she gets her hand almost cut off. They treat it very differently from other cultures, so
they encourage you to be shrewd in Sparta. If you were able to steal food without getting caught, it was fully allowed. If you were caught, you were punished, not because you stole something, but because you were caught stealing it, which is really
You're only in
interesting.
trouble if you get caught. I'm in trouble.
It's kind of the logic that I've applied to most sports. It's only illegal if the refs are watching. Otherwise, it's all right.
All right. Well, what else do you got to say about Spartans? Anything?
And I think that's kind of all I did. It's just the way that they pushed young boys into the army and the robustness of their system. I wrote down a quote of the, I don't know what it would be called, kind of the creed of their army.
Nice.
So I'll read
Their
that just
doctrinal
because I think
statement.
that kind of concludes my points. So, they're called their code of honor.
Nice.
It reads, no soldier was to be considered inferior or superior, no misbehavior, rage, suicidal recklessness of any kind is accepted. The soldier is to fight with calm determination and not raging anger, walk without noise, and only speak with a few words.
Walk without noise.
Yeah, so I just kind of, that you wouldn't...
So not Conor McGregor?
Yeah, kind of just not an air of pride about you or anything. Like, they emphasize that a few times, that you're to be a soldier. You're to be a part of this team. It's not about you. And I think that's really interesting, especially given the era that they came out of. You know, it was the Viking era right before the Spartans and, like, the Grecian time. And, like, the Vikings were a very rage-centered.
Yeah, and just the calmness of the
Right.
Spartans. I never realized they were calm
encouraged
people.
Right. Vikings encouraged berserkers that would take on entire groups of armies, and legends were told about them. And the whole point was to get angry, get hopped up on mead, and then go into war.
An argument could be made that those are the most over the top.
Which certainly could be, yeah. But I mean, that would be the berserkers specifically, not the
Right.
army group.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were a high class of people within the Vikings. But yeah, just the down to the last detail, the code, the honor that Spartans carried
Strictness.
themselves with was pretty robust and pretty over the top, in my view.
Yeah. All right. Well, I took a more flamboyant approach. So, 16th century Poland, their cavalry was insane. So, their saddles and reins were embroidered with gold and precious stones. They rode the best horses around, obviously. They had costumes made of the skins of tigers and leopards and wolves. And they made like wings that would go behind them. So they would look like winged horses. And they were called the Winged Hussars of Poland. So I actually got some stories about them, and I'm going to read that. They didn't wear shields either. They just had the thick breastplate and a really, really long spear that they would hollow out, so that it was lighter, basically just for one use. Their helmets had ostrich feathers, and they just had sabers or swords. And historians don't know if they used the wings during combat. I tend to think so. Historians kind of think so. The usefulness of that would be A, to frighten the enemy, and B, this part I thought was cool, to frighten your own horses so they would run faster, because horses are really jumpy. If there's giant wings behind them, they're going to probably think that's kind of nuts. So, historians favor that the wings were worn just like the leopard skins to frighten the horses. The lance was like 16 feet long, hollowed out. And it's said that the hussars were only good for one day of fighting, but that one day would be a decisive one. 1683, in July, the Ottoman army had once again marched towards threatening the Habsburg realms and the city of Vienna. An estimated 170,000 Ottoman troops lay siege to Vienna, easily outnumbering the mere 16,000 regular defenders, kind of like the Alamo. But despite the clear disparity of forces, the the soldiers of Vienna, they held out for weeks against the Ottoman guns, but it was clear it could not last forever. Food was running out, and so were the soldiers. And then the king of, I don't know if it's of Poland or of the Hussars, led the charge from the Winged Hussars, and right before the Ottomans blew up the wall of the city with, I guess, gunpowder, and it was 18,000 troops who charged down after them. And what they would do is, it wasn't like, if you watched Lord of the Rings, it wasn't like their wall that just came forward, but it was almost more like they're clumped together, like the Mighty Ducks, where it's the flying V, but they were just super tight together, so there was really no way to defend against it at the time. And
the idea with that is that you would penetrate the forces, and then you would be able to
loop around.
Yeah, like
do it
spread
again.
out once you had penetrated the initial.
Yep.
That would make sense, because
Yeah.
a lot of the armies in that day would have just been create a line and then have archers behind you, and that
Yep.
would have been exposed if you were able to get past the line.
And it was super effective. So what they did was there was 18,000, which is probably the largest cavalry charge in European history. 18,000 winged hussars. That's a crazy number of people. That's like 18,000 people. They charged against the Ottomans, and they won. And this, I don't know how to say his name because he's a lot more Polish than me. But he says, Wespajan Kachowski, in his Song of Vienna from 1648, so this is before, describes it that no sooner does a hussar lower his lance than a Turk is impaled on its spike, which not only disorders but terrifies the foe, that blow which cannot be defended against or deflected, often transfixing 2 persons at a time. Others flee in eager haste from such a sight, like flies in a frenzy.
So this would have been a pike then. It's almost you said you're referring to, where like it would have been more of a. It wouldn't be a spear then, where it would be to penetrate. It would be to. Like it would be wider. It would be something to stab with. I don't know how to describe a pike, but it'd be
Almost
different
like
than
a
a spear,
lance.
right?
Well, not a spear like you would throw, but like a spear that you would hold, like a lance, I think.
Right.
That's kind of the idea.
Right. And it's kind of like it would be long. It'd be really long, so you'd be able to
Stab
get people
multiple
from a horse too. Yeah.
Yeah. And eventually they just became too expensive, and people started making guns, so cavalry charges kind of went out. They survived well into the 18th century, but after that, money.
It was kind of like
it was
a
expensive.
like an honor thing, similar to like the samurai of Japan. Just kind of they were no longer revered quite as much, and so the desire to become a hussar.
I think they were really just too expensive, honestly. I wish there was something more to it, but I don't think there is. Because I think if you were a hussar for 2.5 years, then you could retire. I don't think most people did, because they would die before that. So 2.5 years is a long time to be in their military. But that's all I got, so we're gonna move on. Now you know, people. Now you know. Look up Winged Hussars, like and subscribe. Next, question number 4 is the class struggle and natural condition of the economy. What do you think?
It's an interesting question because it's not super relevant today anymore. It would have been a heavy question back in Marx's day, and a question that he attempted to answer in a very extreme manner, like Marx tended to do. If you know anything about Marx, which I'm probably the only one of your subscribers.
We need more. Like and subscribe.
But yeah, it was kind of his conclusion that the way in which history has always gone is of someone exploiting labor and then the laborers rebelling. And that his thought is that will always happen then. At every stage, someone will take power, someone will get benefits from labor.
That's
And
also
then-
kind of because some people work harder than other people, right? So automatically some people are going to get more power. And it doesn't have to be about working hard. But I'm saying there's always inequality between people and how much effort they put out.
Well, one of my teachers in high school always said, work smarter, not harder. And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to, where if you are coming up with an idea that organizes labor, that is more valuable than simply laboring.
Yeah. I'm saying there's always going to be that sort of thing throughout history. Henry Ford. If he was alive, like and subscribe to him too. Alright. Question number 5. Not economics, probably, but in which way have you grown most as a person? Getting personal.
Yeah, I would say that the central idea so far in my life that has driven pretty much everything else is simply the idea that I can think for myself.
Yeah.
And from that comes everything that makes me who I am. And if I didn't have that, then I would need to simply have faith in whoever could talk to me. But since that's not the case, since I have the ability to think for myself, I can have faith in God. I can understand enough about God to accept his gift, to follow him. And, not in a religious case, just recently I beginning to encounter ideas in college that are beyond my scope of understanding, by which I mean I can't look at it and then just make sense of it, after 5 to 10 minutes of thinking about it. I need assistance in some way. Yeah, I need to rely on others, and my trust and sometimes faith in others and God can help me to understand those things.
Sure. Nice. Is there such a thing as a sustainable and successful multi-level marketing scheme?
So if you're calling it a scheme, the answer is no.
Multi-level marketing thing.
Yeah, I guess it all depends, in my view, it depends on your definition of success. Because with multi-level marketing, you will be coming right up against ethical questions at every step. And it becomes very hard to walk that line in a way that generates value for your employees, your customers, for everything else. Oftentimes, you end up selling a culture. You end up selling an identity that isn't about the product. And that's a concern, because if the product is good, it should sell itself. If you're creating something that's beneficial to the economy and to people, they will buy it, they will use it, and it will be something that will make people happier, so to speak. Increase utility, it would be more precise.
I don't understand everything there is to know about multi-level marketing schemes. They don't seem entirely necessary. So if we could just not do them. Amway, looking at you. If I could see through this camera into the internet, I'd find you and I'd be staring right into your soul.
Well,
it's black. It's a black soul. There's nothing there but emptiness. Amway.
I mean, it's
Scamway.
It's easy to see how
probably
if your model is get more people and have those people get more people, that only happens 20 times before you run out of people on Earth, or 5 times before you run out of people in America. And that's assuming that everyone in America even signs up for this.
It's like a chain letter. Nobody wants it.
It just...
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess, you need to keep an eye out. You need to be very cautious. If you're going to be a salesperson, you need to make sure you have a moral obligation to make sure that what you're selling is a product and not an identity, not something that people can get wrapped up in and sell their souls to.
I think good advice is only sell something that you would sell to your own mother. I don't know who said that.
Which, ironically, is one of the moral qualms with multi-level marketing, is that they encourage you to sell to relatives, and that's a big problem. Where you can thrash relationships either off the bat or later on, when the person buys this thing, it's useless, and now who do they have to blame for it? That you may save the relationship if you're a relative purchasing these things or engaging in these conversations, but
puts everyone in a tough spot.
It is undoubtedly harmful. It's not something that is pleasant to deal with. To be precise, it's ethically questionable. It's not something that leads to harmony. It's a disharmony of interests.
Yeah. All right, next question. What is the best advice you could give to someone in 10 words or less? While you're thinking, I'll go first. All right. Best advice I can give in 10 words or less is, instead of saying, why me? So that's the victim mentality. Instead of saying, why me? Say, why not me? because then you lose that victim mentality and you start looking for opportunities to grow and to start living life, instead of staying in your shell and saying, why me? Why should it be me? Say, man, somebody climbed Mount Everest, why not me? Or somebody ran a marathon, why not me? Somebody started a podcast, why not me? Someone liked and subscribed, why not me? That's my best advice I could give someone, 10 words or less.
Yeah, I would say, to start my 10 words, I would say, do not say, I can't, or
Can you just recycling mine? No,
I may have
continue.
recycled yours only because it got in my head. I'm trying to say something
It's catchy.
completely different, and that's why I'm running out of words now. Do not say, I don't understand. Say, I can. Or, like, focus on trying to understand. Don't focus on what you can't understand. Try to figure out how you might understand it. Figure out steps, processes that allow you to understand things. And that kind of piggybacks off of the earlier question that you asked me about the way in which I've grown as a person. I think that these are deeply connected in my mind, where you need to be able to think for yourself. You need to be able to incorporate ideas in a way that you don't need help incorporating ideas. Like, you need to be able to get that right. And from there, you can get so much else right.
Lose your hive mind. Think for yourself. Or yourself, depending on how you say it. Do those things. Also, I should have given him way more time because a lot of the questions he had a lot of time for. This one I gave him basically none. And speaking about time, talking about that right now, there's a limited time to, well, I don't know how limited, but there's probably a limited time to check out the merchandise that I have in the link for you in the description below. Official Moon is Flat shirts and sweatshirts. I think there's a tank top too, and other stuff. Check it out. It's right there. And like and subscribe while you're at it. That'll be fun. Question number 8. Last one before the 3 words. What would you do with $1 million?
Well, as a college student, I would be entering debt, and firstly, I'd pay that. Then I would keep some savings for myself, and then beyond that,
Crypto.
I wouldn't do that. Largely, the knowledge out there right now is that you don't know anything. So that's kind of the idea, is that it's unknown territory. If you think you can get it and figure it out and know how to play with it, that's up to you. It's essentially like dealing with other currencies, and historically, the best currency to bet on has been the U.S. dollar. That could be changing in upcoming years. It has changed in the past few years. There other currencies have been better in the past few years, but again, historically, overall, the dollar's been the best. So use caution with cryptocurrency. But yeah, otherwise,
Not officially recommending you buy cryptocurrency. Let the record show.
Otherwise, I would put the rest into what I'd plan to be retirement accounts, which would probably be investing into the stock market. As an economics student, I know the history of the stock market, and I trust the future. I think that it will do what it has always tended to do.
One thought that I've had, and I don't want to take too long on this, but this is unrelated too. Does communism work based on the good of society? Is more wealth grown? And capitalism grows based on the selfishness of society. Is that accurate? To some degree?
To some degree, yes. Capitalism grows based on profit-seeking people. And the ideas of Adam Smith say that when you seek profit for yourself, it benefits the economy as a whole. And Yeah,
since men
socialist
is-
ideas challenge that to, communism to the extreme degree.
Yeah, but since men are fallible, it's fallible, right? And we're not generally looking out for the good of other people. At least not to make their lives perfect. That should be pretty strong guidance towards capitalism rather than communism, I think.
Right, because if it's true that in seeking profit for yourself you benefit the economy, that is undoubtedly better than setting up a system in which all the power will be centralized in the government, or I think Marx's ideas were more that the power would be centralized among the people and among the workers themselves. Kind of like a picture of Animal Farm, if you've ever read that. Communism is pretty close to that picture. And yeah, I think the problem is you lose control of who is getting power then. Like someone could rise up like the pigs in Animal Farm and just kind of take power. And the system of communism doesn't have a very good answer with how to deal with power-seeking people as opposed to profit-seeking people.
Yeah. I think, again, this is unrelated, but just the way that culture has shifted recently is that people would rather watch unboxing videos than boxing videos. I think for the first time in history, people are no longer concerned about being strong in a traditional sense. And I think that's a concerning trend, but it also leaves room for a lot of opportunity for people who choose to be strong. So, go to the gym. Lift.
Yeah, and I guess ultimately, as a whole, we just want to bring value to society. And that's what our system of economics should try to encourage. I think that some of the counters to communism that have been put forth are that we need entrepreneurs. We need people that are willing to take risks and push their ideas they believe to be right. Because if it pays off, they should get the benefit. Like,
right, because they're the one taking the risk.
Right, and if you are taking a risk and it works out and all it does is benefit society, then there's no incentive for you to actually do that. There's no incentive for entrepreneurs or anyone to innovate in any way.
And I think
that's a big problem with communism.
Yeah. When people recently have been talking about entrepreneurs, I think to myself, what exactly is an entrepreneur? Well, someone who's pretty much self-made and motivated and looking out for their own interest while also trying to grow their own brand. Influencers are kind of entrepreneurs. And I know they get a lot of bad media or whatever for, well, deservedly so for a lot of reasons, but also they are finding niches in the market and filling them. So, entertainment industry, Hollywood is it's on strike right now, I think, right?
I had heard that. I'm
yeah,
not sure about
I think
that,
the SAG-AFTRA union is on strike, so I don't know if that's writers or actors. Somewhere, there's not a lot of...
I heard it was the Actors Guild.
Okay. There's not a lot of content being made in Hollywood right now that's quality. And influencers have been finding new ways to entertain people. Like, say, I don't know how much Avengers Endgame cost to make. It was a ton. It got a whole lot of people watching it. But Joe Rogan can make a podcast for, I don't know, probably a couple $1,000s, maybe more. I don't know. Look up how much Joe Rogan pays for his podcast episodes. But he can get probably millions of people watching it every single day or week or month or however often it comes out. I think it's finding the niche that people will pay for. Well, they don't have to pay for it, but there's money to be made doing that. So
yeah, and I've heard concerns about AI taking over in the entertainment industry, and that one's never made sense to me because it's like, if AI is producing something that's entertaining,
Right.
then it's doing the value, and we shouldn't be having
if there's
influencers waste their time
yeah.
on something that isn't as entertaining. But if
there's
they are,
value being added,
if there is
just let
value
the value
there,
be added.
exactly. And I don't think that we should be clinging to the past in so many of these things
So like
when we can see that it will be better for society for AI to take over some of these industries.
with this podcast here, if AI becomes more entertaining, please by all means watch that podcast, that AI podcast, because we're just not worth your time. But until then, like and subscribe and share with all of your friends. We are back to the final and also original question. What 3 words do you want to be described as?
Yeah, I guess first and foremost, I want to be described as wise, and I would never want to describe myself as wise, because I think that's part
There's
of being
a lot
wise,
of room for
which
pride there.
is pretty ironic, I'd say. But yeah, next I would want to be known as knowledgeable. I don't want to have an air that I don't know what I'm talking about. I want to, at every step, learn more so that I can know more.
That's interesting that you would choose knowledgeable, because for me, if there's something that I don't understand, I want people to understand that I don't understand it, and I'll just say, I don't know. I don't. And is that how you feel about those things? So if there's something that you don't know?
Well, if I don't know, I would want people to know that I don't know it, but the natural conclusion then is, like, if we're talking about all
Right,
these
then you
things,
can find the
and I
answer
know 10 of the
logically.
things and don't know one of them, I would be more knowledgeable, and that's what I want. And I don't want it just to be known as that. I want it for myself. I want to be knowledgeable. I would rather have everyone think that I'm not knowledgeable but know a lot than have everyone think that I know what I'm talking about when really I am making stuff up or along those lines.
He might be a phenomenal actor, though. Maybe. Is that so? You said wisdom, knowledge, and
I want to be known as reflective. I want to,
Reflective.
and I think I am known as that, at least so far. I want to be someone that, and I think if you look up the definition of reflective, it's not going to reflect what I mean. So I just like to quickly define it then. And I would define reflective as thinking deeply. Someone, like, I want to be someone that is known for thinking past the easy answer. Because I think
trying to find the truth.
a lot of people are content with the easy answer, and I think that the truth is a lot more nuanced than the easy answer. The easy answer might indicate what truth is, but truth is a lot harder to find. There are some philosophers that don't believe that absolute truth is even possible to understand. And that's a hard concept to deal with, especially if you understand what absolute truth is. And yeah, I think that there's... I don't know if you've dealt with relative truth at all, but relative truth is an interesting concept that falls flat on its face the moment anyone says, I don't think you're right.
Yeah, if you say relevant truth is true, you'd be contradicting yourself, correct? Or is that not? It's only
that in
relevant.
and of itself isn't the contradiction.
Okay.
The contradiction comes, and this is why I believe Christianity is hated in much of the world, because the contradiction comes the moment that someone professes a worldview that necessitates that another worldview is wrong, because then both can't be right at the same time.
Right.
Because relativism is that both are right. And if you're saying my worldview is that you're wrong, you're poking a hole in that.
Yeah, and then there's conflict.
Right. So because that doesn't make any sense to me, once it gets brought to that level, I would almost define relative truth as something that appears to be true, and then it may or may not be true, but it's something kind of like a accepted fact before you know the real fact. I think you have to have several steps of relative truth before you can come close to absolute truth.
Well, wisdom, knowledge, reflectiveness. That's Marshall. I took a different route because I'm not nearly so wise and knowledgeable and reflective. But the 3 words that I would want to be described as is principled, courageous, and authentic. And those, I think my favorite one there is courageous. but we'll go through them one at a time. So principled would be like, I stick to my guns. If there's something I know is wrong to do, don't do that thing. People can see that I'm not like other people in the way that I live just because the other people are that way. Not easily influenced by the other people, things like that. Second one is courageous, which when I think about courageous, I think some of the synonyms of courage would be like being valiant. I think there's a distinction in my mind between courage and valiance, and that is courage doesn't necessarily need the honor that valiance would have, because when you think about like a valiant warrior, you think about him coming home to his family and all the glory that maybe should rightly be imposed on that soldier. But with courage, I think of like the firefighter or whatever, or maybe the soldier, we can keep using that example, who stays over there and dies for his friends, or runs into the burning building and isn't after the glory of the valiance, but just the courage in and of itself to prove that he is more selfless in that way. Thirdly and lastly is to be authentic. And I want you guys to know on this podcast, I try to be authentic. It's not all about the show. If there's something that I think is completely wrong, that wouldn't be very authentic. So I'm not just going to spout it off. And when it comes to being authentic, you got to be honest, and people can know that you can introduce this guy to Paul, and Paul's going to be the same Paul that talks to you, when you're with just your bros or at work or whatever. It's the same Paul everywhere you go. I think that's important to me, to be authentic. So, wisdom, knowledge, reflective, principled, courageous, and authentic. Those are the words for the day. Don't think to yourself, why me? Think to yourself, why not me? Tell your FBI agent to like and subscribe. Thank you for listening to and watching and experiencing The Moon is Flat!